Whether we are there or not, ITSP Magazine still gets the best stories. Plenty of conferences and events spark our curiosity and allow us to start conversations with some of the world's brightest minds. In person or virtually, Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli go on location and sit down with them at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Together, we discover what the synergy of these three elements means for the future of humanity.
Here we are. We are at Black Hat Hacker Summer
Once
Camp.
again.
Once again. It's been many years we've been chatting about all kinds of stuff. Security.
A lot of years we've been here, and it seems like there are some common themes that keep recurring.
Right.
Even with all this new technology and new threats.
It's back to basics. Is that one of them?
I think it's back to figuring out how to manage all of this. Or that's always been the perennial problem.
There's always something new, and you have to figure out how to fit it in. For those watching, you've probably seen Willy on the show. Willy Leichter, it's good to see you.
Great to see you again, John.
And thrilled to have you on our brand story episodes here. We're going to talk about AppSoc today.
Yes.
Which is cool, and you guys have some new announcements which you're going to dig into. I want to start with the folks who aren't familiar with AppSoc yet.
Yeah.
Maybe a little background on how it was founded, why it was founded, who it's for, what you do.
Great, yeah, and most people probably haven't heard of AppSoc yet, so fair enough. We're a startup, although we've been around for a couple of years, founded by Praveen Katari, who's a serial entrepreneur. He's one of the founders of ArcSight back in the day. He started CipherCloud, where I worked for him before. Done several other startups, and managed to pull.
He's a legend.
He is a legend,
He's
yeah.
a legend, yeah.
And walking down the hallways here a year ago, I ran into him, and he recruited me back into his latest startup.
Nice.
And it's been a lot of fun. So AppSoc is in the ASPM space, which is an awkward acronym, but application
it's hard
security.
To pronounce anyway.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, but application security broadly. But what that means is we take all of this data from all these security point solutions, SaaS, DAST, IaaS, IAC, all the way from development through operations. We bring it all together, we normalize it, we consolidate it, aggregate it, but then we try to prioritize it as intelligently as possible. And the perennial problem is all of the noise that the analysts get. There's just too many vulnerabilities. If you just go by CVSS score, you'll have 10 critical alerts every day. So that's not manageable. So you've got to bring in other factors, the exploitability, the business context itself, how critical is this asset to this business, and a number of other things. We managed to reduce that Venn diagram from, say, 1,000 alerts to 20 alerts that are most critical that you need to deal with. So that's kind of our secret sauce. But also then we orchestrate remediation. Because detection is great, but detection alone without doing something about it gets lost. And in fact, a lot of the problems now are there's so much data that gets into silos that with different teams, the development team has their DevSecOps silo, the vulnerability team has their own silo. You need to be able to put that together and get the bigger picture. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't tell what your posture is. So that's our goal.
I love it. And can I ask this? Praveen's background in security management, the whole SIM space.
Yeah.
How much of that plays a role in what you're doing?
I think quite a bit. I mean, he has a sixth sense for where markets are going, which that's why we follow him. But he's got a combination, security management with SIM. He also started a risk management startup. I was involved with CipherCloud, which was doing cloud security, and the first CASB. So you put those together, there's something new every time. But he's got a very good sense of what enterprise practitioners need day to day. And I think at the end of the day, that's who you have to satisfy.
Yeah, and I think having worked in the SIM space many, many years ago, that you get a nice, good view of what's going on in an organization. So I'm certain he has a good perspective on what's running where, who's running what, how's it supposed to support the business. And
what's funny, if you look at SIM and then SOAR and now ASPM, we use the same words, consolidate, aggregate, deduplicate, normalize. It's been the same terms, but the threats go up exponentially. Yeah. So it requires better, not different approaches necessarily, but better technology to keep up with it, and better prioritization. So, we're using AI like a lot of other security practitioners to streamline it. Although what we'll get into in a minute is not just using AI, but protecting AI systems. That's our next frontier.
Okay.
But like you said, SIM is a good background, and it's sort of deja vu all over again with these same kinds of challenges haven't gone away. Maybe they're too fundamental.
Yeah, and I think and you probably have the same experience at Cypher Cloud, but because you mentioned silos, right?
Yeah.
For DevOps and Cloud Ops and SecOps and IT Ops, and there's all these teams, and they all have some connection in some way to an exposure, right? Or a weakness, or some threat, and being in the forefront of cloud security with Cypher Cloud, connecting security and Cloud Ops and IT Ops. Having that understanding of what's important to those different teams, how those teams function, what their priorities are, must play a huge role.
The specialization in silos is good. You want specialists, but you've got to find the connective tissue so you can get the bigger picture. Yeah. Because the same threat can hit multiple places. There's correlating threats across, if it's a vulnerability in your code, something that's being exploited in runtime, some other new threats that are making this vulnerability particularly a problem. I think that's always the challenge, is putting that bigger picture together. But it's hard because people have their jobs, they have their focuses. You're trying to ship code, you're trying to get all the vulnerabilities flushed out and then hand it off to someone else. And then the biggest thing that we still see every day is important information gets dumped into a spreadsheet, emailed to someone, and then a couple days later, this is why it can take days to weeks to months for companies to do the right thing. Yeah. And it's not a lack of talent or a lack of ideas, it's just there are gaps and that make things incredibly inefficient.
Yeah. Stand-up meetings to run through spreadsheets, not very fun.
Yes, exactly. And also it gets back to different groups speaking different languages and looking for different things. You've got to find a way to satisfy both, give you the bigger picture, but let everybody drill down into what they're looking at. And that's really what we try to do with our platform.
So can you paint a scenario for us? Customer, multiple customers, whatever, kind of a day in the life of working with AppSoc, how things change, how things look now.
Actually, I'll give you a scenario from one of our customers, is a CISO for an insurance company, and he's managing a mid-sized company, about 1,000 people. There's a group of developers, there's a group of people who are doing security management, there's operations people, and he's trying to manage risk across the whole company. And the question for him from the board or from his, the CEO is, are we secure? What's our security posture? And can you tell me, how's it looking today? And his anecdote is he would hire consultants every 6 months, pay them about $500,000 every 6 months to comb through the logs, pull all this stuff together, and then give them a thumbs up, or you need to fix this. And that's not exactly real time. The minute it was
better
done,
than not having it, but geez Louise.
Yes, but it's out of date. It's dead on arrival in terms of the the validity of the data. Yeah. So he's been trying to find a platform to get this in real time, get it as a continuous process rather than a one-off. And that's the challenge. I think, they have the usual assortment of tools in different silos. They have SAST and DAST, they have cloud infrastructure, they have operational tools, they have traditional infrastructure. So there's all these different feeds of data coming in. But what we try to focus on is risk scoring based on some business context, on what's important to this particular organization. And that's also kind of been their vision is, we're not a healthcare company, we're an insurance company. Right. So what are the particular risks, what are the particular assets we're worried about, and really flagging those. And then just making it manageable. So it's a good success story there. I think probably we are most valuable for teams that are trying to connect or collaborate or get the bigger picture.
Okay. What types of teams? The DevOps, SecOps, IT Ops?
Yeah, there are a lot of different titles. So certainly the AppSec groups, DevOps, DevSecOps, but also I guess people come at it from two sides actually. Okay. There's the shift lefters and there's the traditional right-handed people, right? Really trying to do the same thing And both trying to get visibility across the gap, but the infinite loop of the DevSecOps never quite was completed.
Right.
It's a great idea, but I think that's making that actually work. So both sides are looking at the same dashboards. That's really our goal.
And so when you get this information, and we talked a little bit about remediation. What are some of the outcomes? The last few weeks I've had a lot of conversations driven a lot by some of the topics and sessions here at Black Hat around metrics.
Yeah.
And what is a metric that you're going to measure against, and what does success look like? So what?
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it, because success looks like, first of all, not having bottlenecks in getting the information to the right people, automating some of the communication workflows. And there, again, if you're doing a better job prioritizing, when you send alerts to people, they're not bombarded. So, being more selective there. But automating ticket creation, things like ServiceNow and Jira, having that be bidirectional. So, lots of people just working on the ITSM side. So if they're making updates, you want to feed that back. If there's a lot around exception management, we know this bug's not a problem. It's not going to shut us down from the developers. Okay, we don't have to have it pop up 20 times every day. Let's, have an approval process where this bug's okay, put it on the back shelf, and it's not going to raise alarms
So we have some other mitigation.
Exactly. And then also, with every vulnerability from every source, there's a lot of useful information about what to do about it. And making sure that doesn't get lost. That's part of the tickets, that's part of the remediation workflow, all of that stuff, kind of unclogging the pipes with all this information and making it readily available.
Yeah.
And we don't try to reinvent the wheel on remediation. People want to use ServiceNow or Jira or the tools. They want to use Slack, of course. All those things are just part of what we do. Exactly.
So we talked a little bit about leveraging AI to help with some of this, right?
Yeah.
Understanding context and bringing a story together, and maybe even helping with some of the remediation options I presume you're doing. So I don't know if there's anything more you want to elaborate on the use of AI in a meaningful way. But then I also know you've done some stuff.
I think probably a good time to pivot towards what we're doing with AI to protect AI. Yeah. Now, this is an incredibly hot topic. It's also very early days, so there's more talk than there is understanding, frankly, in a lot of this. But that's okay. That's part of the process. But we've all seen this since ChatGPT, went viral. Almost, not everyone, but many organizations are feeling like they need to do something. They need the chatbot up and running. They need to use AI for competitive purposes. So there's this, snowball going with enterprises, a lot of pressure. There's also new players, data scientists, business owners who aren't, maybe not in the traditional security routes or traditional governance routes, who are doing these skunkworks things, creating great stuff. But it's happened so quickly. Like other trends in the past, security is racing to try to catch up. But from our standpoint, it's a very logical extension of application security.
Absolutely.
These tools, while you have new attack surfaces, obviously you got the LLMs, you have the data sets, you have, all kinds of new issues there, but you still got to cover the basics.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've looked at Hugging Face at all.
A little bit. Yeah.
A little bit. It's it's gone from like a few thousand LLMs to close to 1 million now. All free, all downloadable. You can add things to it. Great open source community thing. Except there's no guardrails or governance, and it's incredibly attractive to bad actors as well. And the data scientists love the easy availability of all these models. They want to experiment. They want to test data sets. That's all great. But if you're an enterprise, well, let me also separate two things. There's the whole world of people like me using ChatGPT all the time.
Some prompt,
which there are a lot of issues there, bias, other things. But park that for a minute. What's also happening is enterprises are building AI applications. They're bringing in, tools like from Amazon and Microsoft and Databricks and OpenAI. They're starting to build these stacks of tools. There's a whole ML ops practice now. All of it is really very parallel to what we already do in DevOps, but it seems to be a little bit in a different swim lane.
Right. Is that because of the data scientists versus the
I think a part of it,
engineers?
I think maybe the speed, yeah, I think it's been treated as a specialty and something new. It's code at the end of the day, right? But it somehow has happened quickly that there are new players there that seem to be in a parallel universe.
Right.
And that's a problem for any CISO. We've talked to many CISOs who aren't sure how many LLMs they have. They know there's a whole bunch of AI projects, but they're not sure how many. So starting first, we're doing what we're calling shadow AI. You remember shadow IT? Not that long ago. Shadow AI, do we know the projects? Do we know what LLMs are using? And we're not necessarily trying to, figure out what someone's doing on the dark web. But if you're an enterprise, you're probably using, a platform like Amazon, you're probably using SageMaker or OpenAI or Databricks. So what are those projects? Do you have some governance around them? Have you documented, typical compliance things? Have you documented why you're building this, who it's for, what the risks are, what the sensitivities are, all these things that haven't been really organized. So getting that all into a compliance framework. And then we're also developing a knowledge base around Hugging Face and other sources. So we can start to scan and detect at least where they came from, who's touched it, and also make sure...
Describe that a little bit more.
Sure. So we are scanning the Hugging Face world and using various tools and with some partners trying to put some risk rating around these different LLMs. And then also trying to...
It's kind of like the old days of assessing the App Store.
Yeah, it kind of is, yes. Yeah. And, we're starting with, I would say, as opposed to us trying to find everything bad in the world, we're trying to set up guardrails so organizations can use authorized, approved tools, use authorized LLMs, and make sure that data scientists didn't bring in 20 other LLMs or other data sets that might be suspect.
Connect to known good.
Exactly, connecting to known good, exactly. And everyone's intent is to do that, but without some guardrails or some governance, we know there's going to be some big mishaps. I mean, with CrowdStrike, the potential with AI mishaps, not only doom and gloom, but it's a large attack surface. There's all kinds of stuff we don't know. We don't know how it's going to be exploited, but we know it will be.
Right.
But setting up these guardrails so we're prepared for that, and we at least can have clean AI systems, we can have documentation, and then, there's still vulnerabilities, there's still code underlying it. The other thing with, even if it's a different group building this AI stuff, it's connecting to enterprise applications. So it all goes back to, whatever it is, your, an application that's core to your business. Through an API, exactly. And that's one of the first areas we're looking at is all these API calls to applications from these AI tools. Yeah. So it's a big, it's a big attack surface, but we're chipping away at it. And the other part of it then, as I mentioned before, is not creating a new data silo. There's a lot of people here with, brilliant minds trying to look at different pieces of what we can detect, and we're doing that as well, and also partnering. But once you detect, you've got to put it in some framework to prioritize it to management and do something about it and make it efficient.
Get it to the right team.
Get it to the right team, yeah, not put it in a spreadsheet. Yep. And that's the non-sexy part, but if you don't do that, you very easily create a new data silo. Yeah. So it's exciting times. We're, there's a huge amount of interest. What's also interesting is we're finding, at least from our point of view, the AppSoc world, the CISO world, they're in a way trying to bring this new stuff into the fold and manage it properly. And we know this world well, what they need to do. And not have it be out in isolation.
Yep.
Then the next level is actually getting in line and looking at the prompts and doing some DLP analysis and things like that. So we're starting to work on that. That's a much thornier problem. It reminds me of the days of, I was at WebSense 15 years ago, and a lot of parallels, when we were convinced that you couldn't let people just surf the web at their desks because that's a risk.
What are they looking for?
Or you couldn't let them put stuff in the cloud because that's a risk. We've figured out how to make it work. But, and it's a cliche, but we also believe no one's going to succeed if you say AI is going to, bring us down, it's an existential threat, whatever. It's happening. It should be enabled properly. And if you don't, it'll happen anyway.
Exactly.
And then we'll be caught off guard.
Exactly. Well, what I love about this conversation, and it's the reason I brought it up in the beginning, both you and Praveen have tremendous experience in cutting edge problems that needed cutting edge solutions.
Yeah.
And you're bringing those experience, obviously different technologies underlying all this stuff.
Yeah.
But you've done this before.
Yes.
You've done this before.
Yeah, there's some value to, it not being your first goat rodeo.
Yep.
It's you have to, at the end of the day, it's got to be delivered in a pragmatic way that's really solving the problems people have now.
Yep.
And a lot of
but understanding their business too.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
and mapping it to what they're mapping to how security works, to how their business works. Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of these things, it's early days, there's going to be, we'll be talking about this for many years, I'm sure. And the particular threats will evolve, of course, and what we're detecting will evolve, but it's still got to be brought into the fold so you can manage it and deal with it. Exactly. And that goes back to the SIM days, 25 years ago.
Full circle.
Full circle, exactly.
Full circle.
Exactly.
Well, cool stuff, Willy. I'm thrilled for you in this role, and
Great.
Happy to see that AppSoc has taken off and continuing to innovate.
Yeah, we appreciate that, and I always enjoy these conversations because we're kind of, cutting through a lot of the noise. We appreciate that.
I hope so. I hope so. Fantastic,
all right,
Willy.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks a million. Everybody, thanks for listening and watching. Be sure to connect with Willy and the AppSoc team and Praveen as well, and stay tuned for more from Black Hat.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Sean and Marco's on-location event coverage conversations. Please take a moment to give the show a good rating and leave a comment. Remember to share this podcast with your friends, family, and colleagues. Come back for more conversations and follow Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli as they continue their journey toward redefining cybersecurity and society.